welcome to the Honest Honkies podcast. We're here today joined with Jimbo from the Jimbo Radio Show. I just figured we could start. Maybe you could give us a brief introduction to your podcast and maybe something you're trying to achieve with it.
Yeah, so we just discussed this off mic. This is an attempt for me to hold myself to a little higher intellectual standard in the media that I consume. So that's my original attempt with the podcast. If I was Joe Rogan, I would read my guest books and then have a conversation with them. That would be more of like, or at least listen to the book, or at least do more than just ask the person about their book. So I would want to be more of like a intellectual Joe Rogan, maybe somewhere like in between Joe Rogan and if you're familiar with Conversations with Tyler, this economist Tyler Cowen, like somewhere like I would, I'm not capable of being Tyler Cowen, but something like that, I guess.
Okay, interesting. Just to kind of like stretch yourself and maybe put some more practicality behind the ideas that you've been working out. Is this something?
I mean, just to add. So, like for instance, if I listen to a podcast episode, if you're not really engaging with the ideas, there's this illusion that I understand and that I maybe learned something. But then a week or two later, I wouldn't even maybe be able to reproduce the same idea without looking it up, which is fine. But yeah, so like I'm not in a college classroom or anything. So ideally, I like the idea of engaging deeper with ideas, but finding the time and energy to actually make myself do that, it's just so easy not to do that. So that was part of the original goal.
Yeah, and one of the big illusions with podcasts specifically is you can consume a ton of information. Like me personally, I work at a desk job, and I consistently listen to like 3 podcasts a day that maybe could be 3 hours each. And an illusion there is that you're taking in a ton of information, but in reality, you're not. You're taking it in, but you're not processing it and utilizing it and incorporating it into your mind and weighing it against other ideas. You're just consuming a lot. So it's a really good idea to get out there and talk about kind of the information that you receive, which is kind of what was going to bring me to my first point. In your email, we kind of exchanged a little bit before. You said you used to be a liberal, but now you consider yourself to be more moderate. Was there like a fulcrum? Was there a turning point that kind of made you make that switch or make that change in ideology?
Probably, yeah, probably. I think the easiest thing to call out would probably be the 2015 and 16 election.
Yeah.
Like whole process. I think I kind of believed most, like the overall narrative that the news was spitting out, that like Trump, was a threat to democracy. He would never be able to even complete an election, like 4 years in office. And along the way, I just started noticing that politics became less about sharing any information, and it was more just about slandering. So like that was my first turn off, is that it turned into like, even like the podcast that I liked, because it wasn't people yelling at each other, became people yelling at each other, and it was just filled with adjectives. And I think for a news source to be giving me adjectives of like the worst thing in the world, like don't say the storm was bad, like give me some numbers and I can just determine whether that's bad for myself. Like a storm flooded 17 houses. Okay. I can decide like whether that's bad or not. You don't need to be like worst storm ever, and then you find out like 17 houses were flooded. That's probably not the worst storm ever. So like there was a ton of that. And then I think the other thing happened was Trump completed his 4 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's pretty hard to deny like all the craziness that was going on with just the reality that came afterwards. So that's probably one of the big things that happened. Another thing that happened was I had a friend that was doing a degree, I think, in economics. But anyway, so it's like he was learning about economics, and we would argue about this all the time. And I just said some like really dumb things. One of them being that I don't care about the economy, and I'm this liberal person that's talking about, like helping people and all these things. And my friends, it's like, can you say you don't care about the economy? And what I meant to say, if I knew what I was talking about, is I would have said, like, I don't care about like the GDP, or I don't care about some of these other measurements that the government was really, or I mean, just in general, people really focus on. That's what I probably meant to say. But yeah, so then I started learning about economics at first to prove my friend wrong. And then the more I learned, I just kind of have to admit, like, he was right and I was wrong. And so I just learned more and more. And so, like, those two things probably happening around the same time probably paint the best picture. But I could go back and say that I've always had kind of a bias towards individual freedom. And so that probably helps as well.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, you seem like a pretty reasonable guy, as in, like, you can take in things and filter out what kind of is a lie and think for yourself is what I'm really trying to say. So that's cool. And you mentioned economics, and you mentioned an economic podcast, I think. Are you a big numbers guy?
I mean, probably not. I was really good at math growing up. It was one of those things that I did really well in all my math classes without really trying or liking math or caring about math. So I think I do have maybe just, I'm probably like way more above average for numbers. I mean, I don't really seek out math, like almost never. But yeah, like I loved baseball stats growing up, and I make spreadsheets for, that are kind of for fun, but like not really that mathy, but like numbers wise. And so, yeah, I mean, that may or may not fit your idea of that.
So are you like looking for the statistics of things first whenever you're going to explore a new subject or news or something like that?
Maybe. I think most of my news now, I don't subscribe to any straight up news sources. I have some newsletters that, I pick and choose. I probably don't read most of them, but so I have some newsletters that come into my email, which are probably, I mean, that's definitely news, but I don't, they're not like political or current event type news. And I would say most of my news, like a friend will text something in a group chat. My first instinct is, that's, if I disagree, my first instinct is like to tell them why they're wrong. And my second instinct is like, oh, well, maybe I should look it up. And then if I have, enough impulse control to just tell them that they're wrong and to actually look it up, then yeah, then I would want to find the numbers. Or like maybe what happens most of the time is I'll start typing something. And then as I'm like typing a response, I'll realize somewhere, like some statement that I make, I maybe don't actually know if that's true. And then I'll want to maybe do a quick fact check or confirm that that's all right. And then yeah, along those lines, I'll want to provide some evidence to support whatever idea that I'm trying to to share. And sometimes I'm obviously wrong, but I think like my first instinct is someone says something that I disagree with, prove them wrong. And one of my proofs is evidence.
Yeah, for sure. Which is, I mean, that's a good starting block. I think a lot of the,
but it's also very, very annoying, right? Like it's very annoying for your friends. Like every time they speak, you are sending them a couple of links to prove them wrong. So like, it's kind of an annoying thing that I could do less of too.
And then when you're trying to find the facts, they're already on another subject because it's taking you too long to find.
Right. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Then they're on to the football game. They're like, yeah, what were we talking about? I just sent a link. No, that's really interesting. I think that's a good thing. That's kind of how I am too. I'm a little bit more probably contrarian by nature. I think I get into I wouldn't say I'm a numbers guy. I would say me and Josh are both probably on the not a numbers guy side of life.
Dumb side.
Yeah, the dumber side. But I do like seeing statistics and seeing things and just kind of validating ideas with numerical values, basically. I guess let's jump into then one of the other things that you mentioned that you've always been or leaned more towards individual like liberty. Do you was there a point in time where you were like, oh, I missed the mark on this. I've had an idea about this, but really we could have more liberty in this area. I don't know if you have an idea like that off the top of the head or something you kind of changed your mind on.
Yeah, probably. Give me a couple moments here to think.
No worries.
I would say just in general, maybe the government as being like caretaker type of idea. So when I would have identified with being a very liberal person, I think I probably did think that the government could do a lot more to control people, like maybe and I would say it's kind of hard to remember exactly what I thought but I would say I definitely changed my opinions on that almost like 180.
So you don't think the government should be a caretaker at all anymore? Like hands?
I mean, it depends, right? Or yeah, okay. So maybe not 180. Maybe I've turned like probably like 100 then, right? So maybe like not quite in the middle, but like a little. I would say that good intentions aren't good enough. Okay, yeah, this is probably it. I was probably way more to like intentions and wanting to do good is like enough. And now it's like, no, good intentions are not good enough at all. And you need to actually confirm or check and verify and have some type of alternative route. So let's say we wanted to change something in society. Let's say like the homeless problem. Okay. So we want to help people so that they're not homeless. Okay. Everyone can probably agree. I think everyone can probably agree like that's probably decent, like what the means to achieve that, are debatable, of course.
Yeah.
Then if you do something and it doesn't help homeless people, obviously you should undo it or do something different. And I think the way our government functions is like once you start something, it's extremely difficult to undo it. So that would, and I'm kind of rambling now, but that would be one thing where it's like, I think the government needs to like streamline back a lot of things that they were doing, maybe with good intentions that didn't quite produce the outcomes. So, and before, I think I was just completely disconnected from the actual structure of the government and more of how policies. I mean, yeah, just I guess like the disconnect between the structure and then the actual politics involved in implementing it. Kind of anything that you want.
Yeah.
So maybe I was just a lot more naive, and maybe to answer your question, I'd have to keep thinking.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I guess I would probably honestly consider myself more of like as much of a libertarian as you could possibly be. Like, I don't want the government touching anything if it doesn't have to. Like borders, military, not much else. So do you think you've leaned more towards that, or do you think you are more in the category like, hey, we've done a lot of things the wrong way, but we can implement better ways? And even, for example, let's say we're at like 100% spending on homeless. Are you just trying to get to 80%, or would you rather still spend 100%, but in a different way? If that makes sense.
So now I would look at it more like an economist and just think of trade-offs. So if you lower it from 100 to 80, then what result what's the result there? And how much is the 20%? So let's say, I don't know. I mean, just to make up numbers, like if you were spending $1 trillion on homeless, and the numbers went from whatever, like 5 million homeless people to 4 million. That seems like a really bad use of $1 trillion.
Yeah.
Make like really outrageous numbers.
Yeah. No. That makes total sense.
So it would depend, like what's the cost to house the homeless person? Like that's the way I want to see it now. How much does it cost to house the homeless person? If it's $10, then yeah, let's spend money on it. If it's $10,000, then I think the homeless person needs to do some more.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
Somewhere in there, like maybe $1,000 now, like maybe like $1,000 to $5,000. Now I have to think about it, and maybe I'd want to find some real numbers. Like, what else could the government do with $5,000? Probably not very like probably like housing a homeless person for $5,000 is probably pretty efficient by the government standards.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I forgot, Josh, you remember what that fire was in Hawaii was? Was it on Maui? Yeah, Maui. Mm-hmm. Like that was a big point of contention for a ton of people. They're like, look at how much money we're sending to Ukraine or to Russia, billions of dollars. And we end up sending some like absurdly small amount of money to Maui to rebuild it, to get the proper like fire protection and stuff over there. Which I totally understand. I would much rather, if we're going to spend money at all, I would much rather spend it here than somewhere else. But in my idealist point of view, I would be like, I don't want to spend any money. I don't think that necessarily the problem with welfare is the way we spend the money. I just think it's the fact that we spend money.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Yeah. Public education.
Okay.
Got it?
Got it. 100%.
Really? Okay. So everyone needs to figure it out themselves. Private schools or homeschool. So
the interesting thing is, me and Josh, both of our families paid taxes to go to public school, and neither one of us really took advantage of those taxes. We were both homeschooled, and our moms figured out a way to homeschool us completely on our own. So not only did we have to pay additional money to be homeschooled, but we had to pay double money because the government took our money for something we would never use and will never use. So I don't think funding public education is necessarily at all. I mean, how, depending on your timeline of history, we've done pretty well so far with becoming educated without public funding.
Yeah, so this is where I would not side with the libertarians, and a couple of reasons. So I would dramatically decrease the funding on public education. I might even make it to like 8th grade. I think like an 8th grade education is probably enough as like a bare minimum for an educated citizen. So I would definitely cut it and maybe shorten it. But so this is where I do have more of the government needs to do something for, let's just say, the citizens that can't provide their kids with like the bare minimum that I would, imagine. And so I think public education is one way to do that. And kind of like same thing, like what's the trade-off? I think as a country, if you're looking at big picture return on investment, I think investing in public education is going to have a huge payoff versus a country like, let's say we just split the states randomly and gave half of them public education and the other half none. I think for one, you'd see a few things. For one, you'd see everyone moving to, or well, not everyone. You'd see a lot of people moving to the places with public education, and I think and my prediction would be that you would have a big return on that investment.
Yeah, you're right.
That's an empirical thing that someone could study.
What's the max you learn in 8th grade? Like, what do you learn in 8th grade? I don't even remember.
Probably algebra.
Yeah. So
algebra.
Yeah, I think if I was the dictator of the U.S., okay, I would really focus on.
That's you.
Just reading, writing, math. Those are the things like you need to have a certain proficiency in those 3 subjects.
No science.
Then you're good. No, nope. I don't think so. I mean, I think it's good, but like, what does the average American know? I mean, back to Josh's point, what do you learn in 8th grade? Like most people,
photosynthesis.
I mean, yeah, like that's probably worth knowing. So maybe like bare minimum science, okay. Because a lot of the things you learn in high school, if you don't actually study or use that, you're going to forget it. And if you have the average American take the 8th grade test in any of those subjects, they're not going to do well if you don't give them an opportunity to study before they do it.
Yeah, I had to take a basic math test to get into the fire academy, and the first time I took it, I was like, I don't remember more than half of this, whatever is going on in the math subject. So I I failed it, so I had to go relearn all the math stuff and take it again. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you forget a lot. That's for sure.
Yeah, and with the math, I don't think most Americans need the math. But I think the problem is, so this is where you need parents or you need someone to make you learn some things, because when you're a kid, you don't really know whether you don't have a real idea of whether you're going to need or to know math. And I think math is one of those things, like if you don't learn it, there's definitely like some certain things like fractions. Kids that don't learn fractions, that maybe the age is like 7 or 9. But anyways, there's like a critical point. If you don't learn fractions before this critical point, it's pretty much game over. Like the chances of you being successful in math are like so slim. And so there's certain things like that. Like I would want to find those critical periods and just make sure you get all those. And same, like the same thing with reading. Like there's kind of like a critical period for reading. If you don't meet it by that, then you kind of, it's kind of too late.
Yeah.
But I would just really focus on those skills. Kids aren't adults. They can't decide those things on their own. And so I do feel, not that the government isn't, I feel the government's somewhat responsible, but I actually more care that it's cost effective. It's like everyone will benefit a lot more by having educated citizens that can do basic things like read and learn for themselves. And then they'll be more productive. And when people are more productive, like that's a win for everyone.
Yeah.
For me, it's more like the output justifies it, not that it's an actual human right or something like that.
Yeah, I got you. And I guess the only question I have for you is just looking back at the general trend of things. I think, we have spent more money year over year on public education, and it's only gone down. Do you think, so you would say the problem there is not the money and it's not the government involvement, but maybe the systems that were used, or what do you think is the reason for education being the horrible way that it is today?
Yeah, so I would want to push back on a couple of the assumptions there, but so sure. I did teach for several years in the US, a few years. And then, so I do think that the US is way better at public education than most people think. Mm-hmm. We might spend the most on public education among other countries. So we do, I would say we are not very cost effective. The area where we really suck at public education is like the lower 20% of the students. The ones that need it the most are the ones we really suck at giving it to. And I would say there's a couple of different things going on there. And so I think for the bottom of our population, like our education is terrible. If you go up, like the top 20% of our country is the most educated people in human history. So I think it's like a tale of two cities.
Yeah, but I'm guessing here. This is getting to the realm where I don't know, but wouldn't the bottom 20% be the most like subsidized and most government funded? Like the top 20% would be like private schools, which are, public, where teachers get paid competitively based on their teaching abilities. Like if you're a better teacher, you get paid more. If you're a worse teacher, you don't get paid. And which in my mind would lead to, students that had better mentors, had better teachers because they're paid appropriately. But I don't know. I could be off on that, but I would make an assumption that the bottom 20% is mostly subsidized.
So I think in general, private schools run extremely efficient. There's probably a few reasons why, but actually private school teachers probably make less definitely on average, I bet, compared to a veteran teacher. And maybe one of the reasons because it's a lot nicer to work at a private school. There's not discipline probably works a lot better. Just in general, there's a selection bias. Not everyone, you have to have a certain amount of affluence or resources to even go to the private school. So there's a few things going on there. The schools at the bottom, it's most of schools' funding is from the local taxation, like property taxes. There's some, and then state taxes. The federal plays a very small amount. Yeah. So
the school board is the largest taxing and fund of anything. The school board is like by far.
Yeah. So poor areas, the value of their homes are less. So they are going to get less funding, and the rich areas are going to have a lot more funding. So that's where that's the main cause of the discrepancy too, is where the funding is coming from.
Yeah, for sure.
You said,
and then the yeah.
What did you?
Oh, I taught English language arts.
Okay. For how long?
I taught 4 years in the U.S. so I guess I taught 4 years in the U.S. I taught overseas English as a second language for a couple of years, and then I've been I taught part-time, mostly at a private school the last couple of years, and then I subbed like here and there. Like I subbed while I was going to college, and then I subbed a little bit in Richmond there as well.
And where overseas?
I've kind of been Mozambique.
Oh,
Mozambique. Okay. Cool.
So yeah, sub-Saharan Africa for listeners. I had to look up Mozambique before I went there because I had no idea where it was.
Can you drop a little bit of the lingo, or you just did English?
Oh, Boku. Yeah. So they're a national. Their official language is Portuguese. So I learned some, and I forgot almost all of it. It's been over 10 years now.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. That's awesome. One of my favorite pastimes is language. I think the way that we get words
that's awesome.
Is cool. Let's see. Josh, did you have something or?
I was just going to add, so you said you taught there for a few years. Were they your students there? I don't want to say better than here, but was there kind of the same learnability, or how
work ethic?
How was it there compared? Yeah, how was it there compared to the U.S.?
Yeah, so it's completely different. For one, Mozambique, for those that aren't familiar, is if you look up any stats on poverty, Mozambique is usually at the bottom. They're usually one of the poorest countries. Their institutions are very bad, so there's a ton of corruption. They've been having a lot of violence in the northern parts of the country. There's some Islamic uprising, and they recently have been having global news type protests in the capital because of a stolen election. Theirs might be a lot more credible than the stolen election in the U.S. But yeah, so this country just has a bunch of problems. So right off the bat, most of my students should not have been. I taught 11th and 12th grade. Most of my students, when I say most, I mean over 90%, should not have been in 11th and 12th grade. They completely did not have the skills to make it there. But because it's so corrupt, you just buy your way through the system. So my students, their respect for teachers is completely different. Over there, they are extremely respectful for teachers. So discipline is not really an issue. It's as close to a non-issue as possible. And the actual issue would be trying to get them to do something for themselves. I mean, right off the bat, one student typically will do the homework, and then everyone else will just copy it. That's kind of the way it was. And the other teachers don't really care. That's just kind of the way it is. And so me, I went in there, I was really, I pushed back on that. I made them all. And yeah, so I was that annoying teacher that made you have to learn. And I don't know. Yeah, so completely different.
So the problem in Mozambique maybe was, I don't know if the right word is motivation or maybe a drive or something. And maybe the main problem in the U.S. was, what would you say, is lack of disrespect, or what is the big problem you think here for the kids?
Yeah, so as a teacher, the thing that makes teaching in Mozambique hard is what I just said, the corruption is just pain. And one teacher, you really can't do anything against it. Sure, you could fail all of your students maybe one time, and then your principal is going to lose his mind. And, so you could maybe do that one semester or something. And then, so I think one of the biggest problems with Mozambique, to give you the long answer, when I was there, most of the adults grew up in a civil war. So there was a big, long civil war, in the 60s and 70s. So most of my students, their parents grew up in a civil war. They had no education whatsoever. So there just wasn't that culture around it as well. And so now you like all their curriculum stuff is coming from England, and a lot of their institutions are being funded by foreign aid. And so it's, yeah, I mean, like the system's just bad.
Yeah.
And in the US, institutions are way better. And I think, yeah, now it's kind of like a contentious topic, but I would say parents have way too much influence. And because you have people getting elected to run school boards that are disconnected from the actual profession, I think that probably plays part of it. And then just the politics gets all wrapped in it as well.
Okay. So you mean like elected officials that literally have no passion for teaching or not involved in teaching at all, or?
Yeah, maybe we could look this up and maybe they're a little better represented than I think. But yeah, I mean, in theory, like anyone that wants to get into politics, like school board is probably a good place to start. You don't necessarily need to have any background in education at all. Maybe more people do than I'm giving them credit. I'd have to look it up. I guess I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to look it up.
I think he's looking it up now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's I haven't really thought about school education system much, but I know of some people who are on the school boards, and they say it's, they didn't really know what was going on in their schools. They hadn't been on the board and all that. But I think it's, like you said, it's a good place to start if you want to get into politics. You got it, Shane?
Oh, it's pretty tough thing to look up.
Yeah, it's also probably something that's not, there's probably no like database to really check. So you're gonna have to, could be different like state to state.
Yeah, I typed it in. For clarification, I used XAI Grok, and it said, according to a study published by Ballotopedia in 2022, only a small fraction of the 82,423 school board members analyzed were current educators. So at least currently educated. As far as a specific,
yeah, that seems consistent with the assumption I made.
Yeah, at the very bottom it says sources suggest that less than 10% of school board members are actively teaching teachers. So I don't know. You could probably safely say maybe 50%, which is still a crazy amount for people making regulations, which
right.
I think might be part of the problem there is just to me off the bat, I'm thinking, oh, well, maybe let's take the school board teachers out of the equation entirely. And then let's just have parent-teacher conversations. Let's just have a teacher that's dedicated to his work, talking directly with the child and the child's parents. Because I do think that their voice matters. I think, if they want to be like, hey, my kid doesn't need to learn about, I don't know, whatever subject, then the parent and teacher should discuss it. And ultimately, if the teacher and the parent disagree, then the parent shouldn't force the teacher to do something. That's crazy. The parent should either teach their own children or take them somewhere else, which I think the easiest way to achieve that would just be a more open economy. I don't think the public education is really benefiting anything there in that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole voucher system could be bit. I would like to see it tried out more because I think it could work.
Yeah, if I was
just going to say that
me, I would say the voucher system. Like if you made me choose between, if I had to either stick with our current system or do the voucher system, which is like the government basically puts a price on every child's head and they say you get $5,000, take it to public school, take it to private school, take it to homeschool. I wouldn't think that's the best solution. I would just rather them not spend money. But if that's what it came to, I would do that instead of public education.
Okay, let's say we gutted all public funding and all taxpayers got to keep more of their income. And let's say it was just a huge disaster. Like there's way more crime. Would you change your mind?
Let me think. I mean, I would change my mind if there's evidence, obviously, to support that. Like I don't want to be ideologically captured in any way, but I just haven't seen, like, I think if you go back in history, I don't think that us funding public education, I don't see like, if you were to look at the graphs, increased money to public education did not increase, education. I think people became stupider. I think people learned to memorize tests and not to learn and educate themselves on the whole.
Yeah, I think cost effectively, I think we spent a lot less on education, especially maybe 70 years ago. And I don't think, I would argue our results are better today, but they're probably not, they're probably not proportional to the spending.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if it really is, I don't know what the percentage is, but if it really is our largest taxing district is the school board, then I better be seeing some like serious returns if we're going to look at it on an ROI perspective.
Well, the last 4 years I lived in Rochester, New York, and the local property tax was literally somewhere between like 40 and 60% of the property tax was all to education.
Yeah, that's insane. And you take advantage of that for 18 years, or, if you don't have kids, or if your kids are homeschooled, or, whatever scenario, maybe you're not able to have kids.
Yeah, in this example, so a lot of people do move there, obviously, for the schools. If you look at the school stats, they're about the 90th percentile at the state level and about the 90th percentile at the national level. And I did sub at those schools, and they're just not worth it. Like, they're definitely, the schools are not, like, what I would imagine a 90 percentile school should be. Those schools are nowhere near it.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe this is a good time to just talk about, because you kind of alluded to it throughout this, but you said that your ethical philosophy is mostly utilitarianism, which I haven't even heard that word until you wrote it in the email, which is funny. But maybe you could kind of explain to the audience and to us, like, what that means, how you came to that kind of conclusion, or maybe anywhere you might differ.
Yeah. So Peter Singer's maybe the person that made me familiar with the actual term, and there's a few different ways to measure it or classify it, but it's more like the outcomes, like I said. So yeah, you're looking at the outcomes of something versus any other thing. Like Kant would be, he's all about these like strict rules, like, like this is always wrong. And in utilitarian, it would be like, this is wrong if it makes things worse, type of thing. So I would have to probably look up a definition to find one that I'm really, really excited about, I guess. But I guess just in general, I believe there's suffering in the world. And so I think things that provide and produce less suffering are better than things that produce more suffering. So this would kind of go back to my justification of public education. Like, I'm more interested in public education because I think in the long run, in this, if a person's been educated, they're going to produce less suffering in the world, whether that's like crime, whether that's personal satisfaction, like kind of like the whole lump of everything.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I've got the definition here. It says the doctrine that actions are right if they are useful or for the benefit of a majority. Sound about right? And
so, like, yeah. I mean, and like I said, there's like sub branches of that. Like some people, I think it's hedonistic utilitarianism. They would just care about like happiness, and then there's other different variations where they say no, like pure happiness isn't probably it. Maybe it's more like some definition of well-being that you probably can't actually define. But yeah, I think suffering is probably a good way to imagine it.
So limit suffering is more like what you're talking about. I guess I'd be interested in what are some ways that you think that we could lessen suffering today that you could implement? Like, like you said, if you're a dictator, or, if everybody's listening to you, what would be your advice or your proclamations?
Okay. I can say one, like, personally. So personally, I mostly eat vegan.
Okay.
And it's because I think animals suffer. I think that's pretty cool. I think the science is practically there on that one. Animals suffer. And so I think it's fine to eat animals. Like, if you hunt, I think that's a good way to eat. If you raise your own, I think those are very good ways to eat. But I think in general, the cost-effective way to eat, most of the meat in dairy products creates a lot of suffering. To me, it's just not worth it. Maybe this could also just be like me personally. I just don't like meat in dairy as much as other people. That could be part of it. So that's like one thing that I personally do in my life. As a dictator, if I wanted to minimize suffering, I would have more police officers, and I would maybe change the criminal justice system to be a little more geared towards rehabilitation, but then like extremely strict on people that fail their rehabilitation.
Okay.
But like second time offenders, I would be super, super strict on them.
Interesting. Okay.
Or like multiple offenders. Like I would get stricter the more time you've been put through the process.
What do you mean necessarily when you say make it more focused on rehabilitation? Like, what would that look like?
Yeah. So literally more like job training. Like, you're in prison now, you're losing freedom, but I'm going to give you all these opportunities to learn like a trade, to learn how to read and write, to learn to prove that you can go back into society and be a functionally member that's not going to steal or commit crimes. And people that can't meet that, I would be even okay probably if I was dictator. I would be okay with like euthanizing people that consistently cannot follow rules. Like, so I'm not like punishing them for being bad. I'm just more like, if you're bad, you can't play with us in society.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. So I guess one of the main things that I'm trying to contend with, and I'm trying to hear you out, is how would you decide?
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to tie that back to the utilitarianism. So there is suffering, and there is like some negatives to locking up people. There are some negatives if I like euthanize someone. That's definitely a cost. But I think in general, like the cost benefit analysis, everyone benefits from someone who's, let's just say, like a violent sociopath. Like they're just And so people would probably hate this most because there would probably be a disproportionate racial aspect to this. So, if that would probably be the thing that would rub people most wrong about my plan.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, the race part wouldn't really matter. It would just be like the suffering, which I guess that's what I'm kind of wondering is.
Well, it definitely matters to people, right? I mean, that's the difference. If like one race was taking on all the suffering in my system, but everyone else was like having the best life ever, that might pass the math on my philosophy in general. But like in practice, that I don't think it would really pass the math, but in practice, like that definitely sounds bad.
Well, I guess a couple things. Why? First of all, why do you think it sounds bad? Like, because if we're benefiting the most people, then the natural human instinct should be that it would be good. So why does this small minority of people feel like a bad thing?
Well, so I would say just the fact that if we polled a bunch of Americans, they would be outraged by that. I would say that's maybe one piece of evidence. The other is I don't think enough of society could truly be okay with that situation.
Yeah.
So in that case, I don't think the math on it would actually work out. I think if there was, unless the minority was like so small that most people didn't know about it, And then now we have a different ethical problem where in that case, I might alter my utilitarianism and maybe you have to go towards something more Kantian and say like, no, like maybe this is just flat out not okay.
Yeah. I guess the other thing,
I would say this is also not I don't think it's really practical, but as far as like, I don't think society is ever going to really get to that point. Maybe I'm wrong.
yeah. Do you think so? So if the criminal, whatever they're doing, if they find happiness in what they're doing, it's just not valuable because it's not the majority happiness, and it causes, and their suffering would infect the majority of people. So, like, if one day the murderers were 51% of the population, and that 51% had more happiness, less suffering, murdering, you would be like, okay, the poll checks out. We're going with murdering. That's awesome.
No, definitely not. And for one, like that wouldn't last because if 51% are murderers, they're going to run out of bodies like in a couple hours.
But I mean, what's the difference though?
Well, then you're going to have like 99% murderers, and then you're going to that world. I just can't imagine that world having less suffering.
But I guess what I'm getting to is like, it seems like there's definitely things that are reprehensible. Like there's things that even if the majority of people believe them.
Let's get crazy with it. Let's say torturing babies.
Okay.
Let's say if we just like for every million people, we're just going to torture one baby. It's going to be like excruciating torture. But but for some reason, like this magical thought experiment, everyone's going to be like really happy. So would I justify torturing 1 out of a million babies? Probably not.
Well, why not? Because I feel like
I think it's hard to I don't have a good answer, and I think this is the problem with utilitarianism is like you can't be 100% utilitarian.
Yeah.
I think you can be maybe like 60 to 80% utilitarian.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I was going to say it doesn't sound like you really agree with that. Like it sounds like
I mean you can't be like 100% on board with it. I don't think.
Okay, gotcha.
So I would say it's more like just my strongest influence. So that's kind of maybe the grounding philosophical idea that supports my other ideas I have.
Gotcha. I mean, I think in theory it sounds nice. It's like you want to limit suffering and you want to maximize happiness, which we can discuss whether or not happiness is a good thing to achieve or not. But in theory, just on its face, it does sound like a nice thing. Like, hey, let's make more people more happy and less people less sad. Josh, do you have anything? Or I was gonna.
I don't know if happiness is definitely is the same as the benefit of the majority. So I mean that could there's two different definitions. Happiness and benefit. A benefit can make you happy, but also what benefits you can also not make you happy. So
true.
I don't know if utilitarianism is all about the happiness.
I have never been happy one time working out. Not one time. But it's definitely for the benefit.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, and yeah. I mean, I was just going to say like that's where you kind of have to just make up calculations in your mind. There's not going to, without maybe a super crazy supercomputer that could measure like every single atom like on Earth, there's going to be no way to really know. So you're just kind of making best case scenario guesses based on whatever information you have, and the information is always going to be incomplete. So I mean, like for me, like a choice like not eating animals is a very easy choice for me. Like the calculations check out just fine. Like it doesn't bother me at all. Like I almost never crave meat and dairy, and I produce almost zero suffering to animals from the way I eat. So, well, that's not true, but at least I produce almost zero suffering to animals raised for food.
Yeah,
I produce a lot of suffering for animals.
I always crave meat and dairy.
Yeah. So maybe if I was like Josh, I would have a different philosophy. Maybe I would eat fish or just chicken or or say
for sure. I think it's because Josh is obviously likes meat. I actually was carnivore for a while, but that was mainly for dietary restrictions. Like I really just oats mess me up. So, but the thing is I think part of this uprise, and this is speculation, I don't know. I think part of the uprise of like PETA, veganism, stuff like that, I think it does come from a good place. Like, hey, we should be treating animals correctly. But I think they just swing way too far. I don't think it has anything to do with whether or not we eat them. I just think it has to do with where we're raising them, where we're getting them, you know. But I can understand what you're saying. Like I can understand wanting to, you know, not have pigs just wallowing in their own mud before they're on my plate. Yeah. But also they're tasty, so there's that.
Yeah, they are.
Let's see. Josh, did you have something or?
No, I don't have anything else to say about that.
Well, we're getting close to wrapping up, so let's see. I was thinking maybe we could talk a little bit about let's see what you wrote. Oh my goodness, I lost it.
I could go over on time if you guys wanted to.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can discuss this. I was going to bring up, I don't know where it was. I had it written down, but I don't have. Oh, here we go. Supports almost all abortions for utilitarian reasons and not for feminist reasons. What is kind of your thinking behind that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it goes back to like what I've been saying. I think unwanted children in the long run produce way more suffering than the amount of suffering that a woman has to bear during an abortion, which is costly. I think most people discount big time how much suffering a woman goes through for an abortion, even in the form of a pill.
Gotcha. So I'll get to that. What did you mean by like feminist reasons?
Yeah, so the feminist reason is women get to do whatever they want with their body. I think that's a dumb argument.
Why so?
Well, because a woman just took one of my sperm cells. So I mean,
it's not just her body.
I'm not
at the end of the day.
Right. I mean, like it's in this case, like there's something that if she doesn't want the child and I do want the child, there's options there.
Okay. If I get,
now, I'm not completely against. I mean, I just that the feminist argument just doesn't affect my opinion on the issue.
If I give you significant evidence that was utilitarian, would it change your mind, or is it more of like a reason?
Wait, okay. So you're saying that the abortions end up creating more suffering? Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've changed my mind. Sure.
So there was a study out of California done by or done on Medicaid recipients, people that were on that of 200,000 people. And of those 200,000 people that had abortions, 150% of them, as compared to like regular people that didn't have abortions, they were 150% more likely to commit suicide. So, and there's a ton of, we could go into, I have a ton of examples of how abortions are just statistically, not even, me and Josh are both Christians, so we have, spiritual beliefs about it. But
okay, can we step back to that number though, 150%? So this is one where like I would want to know what the numbers mean. So for instance, let's say the woman that doesn't have an abortion, let's say like the chances of them getting or committing suicide is maybe like 1 in 100,000. So 150% more likely could still be like 1 in 30,000. So like that's where I'd want to see the numbers. So like what's how many actual suicides are gonna so we would have to double check the study and see what the numbers actually represent.
For sure. And well, 200,000 is a very large group for any medical study.
Yeah, no. I think those numbers are probably legit, right? Like as far as that's a very large sample size. But how many? But what's the actual odds of committing suicide having having had an abortion versus having not had an abortion? And then how many other things do you like? For instance, not all women that get abortions aren't the same as women that don't get abortions. Like women that get abortions maybe are more likely to come from like a one single parent family. And so maybe you might be able to isolate. Maybe it's just that a one single parent family makes you more likely to commit suicide, and the abortion might have maybe a little to do with that. But I mean, I haven't seen the study that you're referencing, and if it's a good study, they would have accounted for that.
Yeah, no, I think
so. I would accept the 150% increase. I would accept that as probably being an accurate measure.
Yeah, one of the things that I think a lot of people forget about too is because abortion is such like a heavily debated topic. It's like very sensitive. One of the things that people forget is they just talk about all the bad things. Like I just mentioned, reference to the suicide going up. There's also I think a Finnish study that says like 300% more likely. That one was done with less people, so I usually reference the 200,000. The other thing is that people forget is there's a lot of like health benefits to actually having children. And this is in many studies, like women that breastfeed are significantly less likely to have a stroke postmenopausal. Men and women, both of their blood pressure rates on the average drop significantly. There's a lot of data for just having kids. It improves your mental health because people say it gives you more meaning for your life. I think depriving society of one of our most inherent values is significantly more damaging than somebody having to pay for a kid. I mean, there's 1 million people waiting to adopt just on the wait list. I see no like numerical reason for why we're aborting. Like that, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I guess I'm not familiar with 1 million people on the wait list. Maybe I would adjust my stance on that as well. I'm not sure if a lot of people are going to want like let's say like a more worst case scenario, maybe someone that's like on drugs or something, like someone that's actively doing drugs the whole pregnancy because they're addicted and they're not going to stop. You
mean for adoption or just to keep it?
Yeah.
I mean,
no, adoption.
I have family that adopted, or not family. I had friends that adopted a child that was born in under those conditions, and they suffered because that child obviously had conditions because of it. When infants in the womb are subjected, they often come out with addictive personalities, horrible withdrawals, and stuff like that. But that never took away from them wanting to take care of that kid. And I think that just referencing, we're not even talking spiritual, referencing the fact that mom is, even if she feels bad about giving it up for adoption, which, is a real thing, she doesn't have to live with the grief of, of killing that child. And I think that there's significant reasons for the argument that abortion is significantly more harmful than good.
Yeah, I'm not sure on the societal level, like looking at it. One thing that kind of influenced me is women that have abortions end up having the same amount of kids over the course of their life. So that would. So I'm not sure if it's actually changing the dynamic that much.
What is it? What do you mean? Like, so that if they have two,
so let's say like women end up, yeah.
Okay.
So they end up so let's say instead of having a kid when they got pregnant in high school or college, they'll just end up having the same amount of kids, but they'll have them later in life when they're more stable.
Well, I will say,
and so this gets back to like the parents will be better. Like a 29-year-old parent will be much better than a 19-year-old parent. So I think like all those little things like compound, and you do end up with a better world, where especially with the abortions that you just take a pill. Like the earlier, like the first trimester abortions, you take a pill, and it's not like women still suffer a lot, but I think the amount of suffering in the world that woman bears is way better than the suffering from having the unwanted kids. And so I guess I'll have to double check if there's a lot of abortions going on.
Yeah,
I don't think there's enough people on wait lists. There's probably more than that. Probably a lot more than that.
Yeah, I think last time I looked, it was like 100,000 a month. So a conservative's $1 million a year.
Okay, sure. So I don't like. How long are these people on the wait list? Are they going to stay on there? Like, are they going to take 5 kids? I think a lot of them probably won't. So at some point, if you have 1 million abortions a year, which I actually think it's a lot higher, you're going to run out of parents that want the kids. I think that's going to create the suffering.
Maybe. I mean, limiting abortions would also, you would have more people that actually do want to keep their kids because they see people in hard situations actually being able to achieve it and not just having an abortion. I guess one of the things I do want to go back to is that you said, they end up having the same kids anyways. That doesn't negate the fact, just numerically, if you have an abortion, you're 50% more likely to get breast cancer, which breast cancer and ovarian cancer. Your body, when you, obviously, we're all dudes in here, so we don't really know about being women, but women's bodies are significantly governed by hormones, by processes. And whenever you interrupt those processes, they can have significant reactions. And so if your body's expecting a baby to come and a baby never comes, and this happens with miscarriages too, but those are uncaused, accidental. We're talking about like making a choice. You're choosing to introduce yourself to a higher likelihood of cancers. Like I said, postmenopausal strokes. You introduce, like I said, cardiovascular diseases. And I mean, these are cited. You can go look them up. Like I mentioned, the other one, the big one is the suicide rates.
I would accept those. Seems right. I mean, seems like within the realm of possible. I'm not educated on it, but
yeah. So that's one of the things I just don't think it's talked about a lot, is because, it is an area where I don't, Christians try to argue with non-Christians with Christian perspectives, which is like, you don't care, like you don't live by those codes of life. And so it's kind of absurd for us to argue like that. But in reality, like there are also other reasons for not doing that as well.
Yeah, I would even rather see, to get back to areas where I would want maybe some policy, is I think there's things that we could do in society that could decrease the amount of abortions so that the legality of it isn't the thing that determines whether someone has an abortion or not. I think education is one of those areas where you, not by like abstinence training, I think that's proven to not work, but yeah, like birth control. Yeah.
This is kind of a lot like the vouchers. If you made me choose between, abortion funding or how about, adoption funding, I would much rather choose adoption funding. I would much rather, if you're going to make me spend government money, I would love it to pour money into adoption facilities, a foster care system, public education, even. Like, then all of a sudden you would get me, I wouldn't want to do it because I would just rather a free market society. I think that people, when given the opportunity to be generous, are generous. I think that's a common misconception that people are inherently evil on the average. I just don't think that's true. I think people that are living by moral code are generous and kind, and I don't think the government needs to make me be kind. I think I could be kind on my own, and I can give my money to those who need it more.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that would even probably work better for the homeless people as well. I think one of the reasons, well, now I'm kind of speculating because I'm not that informed on this issue, but I'm assuming that the funding has a decent amount of influence over how many homeless people there are. Like, as far as like having social programs that allow them to, whatever, get whatever, get some type of, food stamps or money or whatever. And yeah, I do think people would be more willing to take care of people if they didn't feel like their taxes are being wasted on these other programs.
Oh, for sure. I think in California, like all of the social workers that are involved in the homeless program are like, some ridiculous percentage, like 80% of them have like triple digit salaries and stuff. It's like, and the homeless problem has only gotten worse. So I think it's clear that money is not the issue. Money, the way it's being distributed is the issue. Josh, did you have anything you wanted to get to? We're kind of running a little over, so I didn't want to waste too much of his time.
No, I'm fine. All good information.
Jimbo, anything you want to shout out your podcast we mentioned at the front? Anything else that you want to go over?
No, I think I'm good. Hopefully, my rambles came through.
No, we really appreciate it. It's awesome that we just live in a time where 3 dudes can sit behind laptops or desktop, whatever you got, chat through microphones transmitted over the air, and all of a sudden our ideas are not just in our heads. We're not just taking them in all day, but we're discussing them. And
actually, I have a funny little anecdote about the abortions as well. Believe it or not. So my wife is an OBGYN, and so she knows a lot about abortions.
Yeah.
And so we've discussed this with people, and every time we've discussed abortions, anyone we've discussed it with has moved further right. And it got to the point where like my wife hates, because I always bring it up to mess with her too. But so like when people do get informed about abortions, they start moving further and further right. Yeah. From my experience, it's kind of a wild phenomenon, because I do think most people are extremely disconnected from the reality of abortions.
Yeah. Like the other thing I forgot to mention is people that do take the pill, there's like, I think I want to say, whatever percentage this is, I want to say 30,000 of them are actually like severely hospitalized after they take the pill. Like even the pill itself is not safe for people that say abortions are safe. Obviously second and third trimester abortions are, everybody knows those are also not safe. It's a medical procedure. And you open yourself up to infections, all kinds of horrible things.
Extremely brutal. Most Americans that support abortion have no idea what it's like to have one of those abortions.
Yeah, and I think part of that is just due to whatever's been happening with wokeness, with leftism, with inclusion, no matter what, with just anything and everything we can do to include all minorities and make them feel as wanted as possible, no matter what they believe, at any cost, has caused this. And it's actually been rapid. Like you mentioned that people are becoming more right. I think people are kind of returning. Democrats used to say that abortions should be safe and rare. That used to be their motto. They didn't used to be like, it's a women's empowerment to have an abortion, which is obviously crazy. Like no women are being empowered by introducing all those ailments to their body, physically and mentally and spiritually. But like I said, we appreciate you coming on. You can check them out on the Jimbo Radio Podcast. It's on Spotify. Is it anywhere else that they can find it?
Oh, it should be on most of the popular apps.
Okay.
On Apple and yeah.
Do you write at all?
I do some writing as well. I have a blog that I occasionally write on. I'm actually I started writing. I'm maybe like over 20,000 words into a novel.
Oh,
okay.
Fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction, yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
Sure.
Maybe you have to cut down if you finish it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm planning. I think like 40,000 words would be a really They would probably call it a novella, but yeah, that would be like a really short, probably like 100 to 200 page book. So I think I'm gonna at least, yeah. So I think I'm gonna at least get to 40,000 words, and then then I'll just tell the story. However, but yeah, so like my goal as of right now is to at least get to 40,000 words.
Dang.
That's awesome.
You doing it in
If you guys, what's that?
You doing it in Word? Just a classic?
I use the open whatever they call it, and then I use the Google Doc. So whatever the open source one is the one I have on my computer. So yeah, I'm using that and then Google Docs. I have a short story if you guys are interested that I wrote about last year, and I'll text it to you.
Okay.
There's an audio version that's like close enough. It's not 100% what I ended up with, but it's pretty close.
That's awesome. Okay, maybe we'll
Cool.
if it's online or whatever, maybe we'll try and link it. And
yeah, man. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, it's online.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, we really appreciate it, especially for you staying a little bit over. Have a good rest of your evening.
Yeah.
All right. Peace.
See you.
See you later, Jimbo.
Love you, HONK. Man, we keep the radiant stuff, man. Radiant stuff, and I keep your mom in a Dutch oven. Radiant stuff. Radiant stuff. Radiant stuff.